The West has this tendency of trying to put a face, a name and family name to all of their problems. Their problems is, of course, with Russia in general, because to them we are not real people. We're second sort at best, and they just want our resources and, you know, maybe our pretty girls and maybe our little boys, considering what the West is people, or the Western elite is peopled by. They just don't need the rest of us there. So the problem is with the West is Russians, and the problems for the Russians is the West, in general Russians. But they try to put a face on it because they can't comprehend that. And they put that face of Vladimir Vladimirovich. Vladimir Vladimirovich is the face of the will of the Russian people. They don't like to face that because they think that if they can just get rid of one man, that's it, just one man, everything's going to be great. We're going to go back to the 1990s where we can rape, pillage, and murder Russia at will and get really rich. And then we'll avoid the economic catastrophe that's already rolling in Europe and is bubbling up in the US very, very quickly. So considering that they like to personalize all their problems, most of the problems that they make themselves, considering they like to personalize that, to put the person that they personalize that problem into their hands, because like it or not, this is Alaska. But wait, when everybody's saying, oh, it's right near the borders, little like 40 kilometers between Russia and Alaska, yes and no. There's about 40 kilometers between the easternmost Russian islands and the westernmost American islands. That meeting isn't taking place on those islands. Those islands are barren, devoid of human life, and if there is any human life, it'll be some tiny Eskimo family village or something of that sort. So no, the meetings aren't taking place there. They're taking place on mainland Alaska, which is actually quite a bit of a distance from Russia, and in the hands of the Americans. Now, it's bad enough to trust the Americans, and I'm talking about the American elites. I mean, these are the people that basically broke every single contract, every single agreement they've signed in their 250-year history or so. Country has been at war for all but 12 years of its history. And those, obviously, pieces, the exception to the American elite, not the rule. Now, having said that, and then you get in particular with Donald Trump. Donald Trump, this is the guy that was negotiating with the Iranians while setting them up to be murdered. 3 months ago, 3 friggin' months ago. This isn't ancient history. This is fresh off the mint. And this is the guy that's going to have Putin in his hands. I don't know which other way to put it. But that's the reality of it. I'm personally in shock. I would never, if I was in Vladimir Vladimirovich's place, I would never in 1,000 years or in 1,000,000 years, or in 100 lifespans, put myself into that kind of condition for those kinds of people. I mean, this is utter insanity to me. And I'll voice it, and I've posted it in Russian, and I've said it before. To me, this is absolute the definition of insanity. To put myself in that kind of a position with those kinds of people. Hold up, Drago. So yeah, I mean, and this is just, I'm praying for Vladimir Vladimirovich and his health. And I don't trust the Trump administration, the people around Trump. Even if Trump is serious, the people around him, I mean, seriously, the CIA, National Security Agency, I mean, seriously, NSA, all these people. Of course, again, what the West needs to understand, Vladimir Vladimirovich is the only person keeping hell from breaking loose, really loose on the West. Because you're not going to get another Yeltsin. You're going to get a really hard-liner coming in. That's going to burn Europe to a cinder, maybe a US too. So you've got, I don't know if but the problem is with the West, with the Western elites, they don't consider that. They're too stupid, too inbred, and too arrogant to actually consider what might happen tomorrow. They all like to play this house of cards. Oh, if we just get rid of one person, the entire system will collapse and we'll take everything over. Just like the Israelis and the Americans. Yeah, they tried that in Iran. Didn't work, did it? And the new Iranian commanders are going to be replacing are more energetic, younger, and want revenge. So there's that. Lesson learned. It should be a lesson learned for everybody in the world. Now, as far as peace, I mean, seriously, what peace are we talking about? There cannot be peace. The only peace that can be there is Zelensky in chains on a tribunal, and maybe in Moscow, and the rest of his ilk, and the Kiev government destroyed, not even thrown out, destroyed. I mean, look, first of all, what are the Americans and the Russians are going to agree to? Russia is willing to give up chunks of Sumy, chunks of Kiev, and chunks of Dnipropetrovsk Oblast in exchange that the Ukrainians leave the territories that are now Russian, all the territories. See, the Americans and the West, they, as I've said several times before, they like to think of Vladimir Vladimirovich, because they're ignorant or they're self-deluded, as some kind of dictator, tyrant that can just do whatever he can and wants. First of all, Vladimir Vladimirovich is a lawyer, and he's very legalistic. Too legalistic, in my opinion, because they like to play strictly by the rules, the imperial order's rules, while we're at laws of international affairs, while the West just does whatever the hell it wants, which is a mistake, an incredible mistake. But they're just now, I think, starting to walk away from that, realizing that, you know, being white and fluffy is great if everybody else is the same. But if everybody else is getting into everybody else's business and you're not, you come out as the odd man out. And that can't happen. For Russia, that cannot be allowed to stand. Armenia, Azerbaijan, case in point. We'll get to that later. So even in exchange of those territories, okay, so let's consider this. The Americans say, yeah, sure, okay, we agree to that. And the Ukrainians who are backed by the Europeans say, fuck no. Which they've already said, fuck no. Zelensky's flat out said that. So you either have to remove Zelensky, and probably quite a few, and cow the Europeans. But if you do that, if you put in actual people that actually want peace, instead of just another warmonger like Zaluzhny, who's a Nazi, plenty of photographs of him, Nazi symbols on the Una Unza flag and so on. So, paraphernalia, yeah, that's it, paraphernalia, that's the word I'm looking for. So, unless you actually put real people that want what the majority of Ukrainians want, in this case, peace, what are you going to get? You're just going to get Minsk 3. And more likely, anyways, if you put even the people that kind of want peace, you're still going to get Minsk 3. Sure, Ukraine's not in NATO, but NATO's in Ukraine, in one way or the other. I mean, we've gone down this road before. What do you think Minsk 1 and Minsk 2 were signed? Because Minsk 1, the Ukrainian army got crushed by the rebels. Minsk 2, the Ukrainian army got crushed by the rebels. So they signed, they did nothing. Except this is going to be on a much larger scale. And again, how are we going to enforce that? Without Russian observers inside of Western Ukraine, or some kind of mediocre, at least, control. There's going to be nothing to keep these people from rearming, and in 5 years we get a bigger war because the Europeans are now arming up for a big war, and then we're going to have to deal with all of them instead of dealing with them piecemeal. No, that's not a plan. That is a plan for the next generation to have a bigger disaster. Meanwhile, there's going to be endless terrorism from the West, because that's what they do. Murder women and children, that's a specialty, especially their vassal proxies, the Ukrainians. They're going to be doing mass terrorism constantly, drone flights constantly that the West isn't going to notice, of course, as always. We've gone down this route before. We had 10 years of this shit. Well, I'm sorry, not 10 years, 8 years of this shit. It was called Minsk 2. The OSCE is an absolutely corrupt organization of Brussels and Washington. There's no neutrality in that organization. As we saw when the Russian offensive began, and OSCE buggered out, and then they found all the cameras set up to overwatch the rebel positions, and the information flowed directly to the Ukrainian army. So anytime somebody new came out or anything moved, any equipment, they instantly got attacked because the OSCE, the observers, were working for the Ukrainians as spies. So there's nothing in the West that can be trusted. It hasn't been corrupted absolutely by the absolute corruption that is the West. So what kind of peace is that going to be? It's not going to be a peace that's going to satisfy the vast majority of the military or a very large chunk of the population. Any kind of swaps like that. Because we'll freeze the conflict means there's going to be another conflict. It's not going to be North Korea, South Korea. It's going to be Syria. You cannot trust the West. The modern West is a satanic, insane clown posse that can never be trusted under any circumstances. This isn't even trust but verified. This is treat him as the enemy and keep your bayonet sharp and pointed and your powder dry, because it's just a matter of time. That's the West. Call me paranoid, call me insane, I don't give a damn, because that's how I see it, and that's how, and there ain't nothing that's going to change my mind, because that's the way I see it. Well, maybe something will change my mind. Go ahead, I challenge you, change my mind. And even these peace talks, like I said, these peace talks go forward, and then what? Zelensky and the EU say no. Because look, the moment Ukraine ends as a big war, these EU politicians have big problems. They've sank their economy. They didn't get the big money payouts. And then what? And I'll tell you this, and I've got it from very good sources. Van der Leyen is negotiating her exit out of the EU and Europe in general to the Americans. That's right. Why do you think she signed everything, even though everybody else was screaming bloody murder? Because she's got a ticket, and for her and her family, out to the US, and she gets to keep the billions that she earned off of the vax, the illegal purchase, because she broke all the rules. So you've got these kinds of leaders. They're going to drive this until collapse, or because they've screwed up. So for them, it's better to keep the war going. And I've said this many times before. I'm probably repeating myself an umpteen time. So there's that. The only way peace with the West is if the West is either Russia capitulates and commits suicide, or the West has revolutions, actual revolution. It doesn't matter who comes to power, monarchists or Marxists. The main thing is it's people who aren't the present government or their pocket oppositions, which are just as paid for and bought. Drago, сядь. Nah. Okay. Gave him a treat. So anyway, so there's that. And I can't think of anything else to add to that point. So no, I don't think that's going to be bringing any kind of peace, any real peace. There's a reason why they want a ceasefire first, and then we'll negotiate later, because later never comes. And that's the whole point of it. That's why you continue the war until the enemy signs a peace treaty with enforcement procedures in it, not just on their word. Because the word for the West means absolutely nothing. Murdering your opponents while negotiating with them is not an exception to the Western traditions. Read it up. Read up what they do. There is no guest law in the West. Not really. I mean, in fact, there was a quote from the earlier Pilgrims that there was one time the Pilgrims had invited the warriors and chiefs of one of the Indian tribes that they were near to a feast, and poisoned all of them with poisoned wine. And that was considered a great victory for Christ. You know, that's how whack these people are, considering you murder your guests, and that's supposed to be a victory for Christ. Sorry, people. Those people involved in that, those pilgrims, are so far from Christ, it's not even funny. The Antichrist, maybe, but definitely not Christ. And they're looking at us no better than they're looking at those Indians, the modern version of the pilgrims. So there's that. Drago. Иди сюда. Drago. Иди сюда. Сядь. Сядь. Лапу. Молодец. Молодец. Anyways, so next, this is actually a clown world. So one of the biggest warmongering whores in the West, yes, Lady Lindsay, who else could I be talking about, is now calling Modi a warmonger for buying Russian oil. Modi, a warmonger. Let's see, the Americans overthrew the government in Pakistan and put in a warmonger, Sharif, and they had a jail, what was his name, Mustafa, I can't remember his last name. The previous prime minister, who was a footballer, or he was either a footballer or he was no, he was a sports. He was an athlete. Well, I can't. I'll have to look him up again. But anyways, he was the most popular prime minister Pakistan ever had. Got 14 years because he said we're going to have peace and we're going to make up with India and we're not going to support Ukraine. So Mustafa, I think that was Mustafa was his name. Sharif got put in place by the Americans, who led a coup. Then the Americans couped the Bangladeshi government that was more or less allied with India. And they got their fingers deep into the regional elections in India to make sure that Modi didn't have a super majority. So that's called friends. That's the American friends right there for you. This is how America treats its wannabe friends. And Modi's been taking notes. And now all of this. And now you got that little military-industrial sector whore Lindsay screaming about Modi is a warmonger. This is the man that just loves every war, as long as he's making money off of it. And he's calling someone else. It's projection. It's a psychological disorder. It's called projection. And whatever the Americans accuse or the Europeans accuse someone else of, you know that's what they're guilty of. They're guilty of kidnapping children. They're guilty of child molestation. They're guilty of mass murder. They're guilty of all of this. In fact, if you look at it, interesting enough, look at how many open cases of missing children are in the U.S. And these are citizens or legal residents. It's almost 400,000, maybe actually more than 400,000 missing children in the U.S. Open cases. FBI doesn't seem to be too worried about that. And you gotta wonder why. And that's not counting illegals. God only knows how many hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of illegal children have gone missing in the U.S. And these gangs trafficking them to the elites. Cry of Freedom, remember that movie? Interesting enough, why no Hollywood theater wanted to pick that up, wanted to touch that with a 10-foot pole, the hot potato, because they're all guilty of it. And they're now screaming that Russia kidnapped children. 300 or so of them, that's all they could come up with. About 150 of them actually turned out to be inside Germany, whereas lots of Ukrainian children have disappeared. Thousands of them. Got to a point where Ukrainians were coming to the Russian embassy asking for help. Not that Russia could do anything for them, because they're not Russian citizens. Children have been taken away from them. Children have disappeared in Europe. And these children get given to God only knows whom. And for what money. So there's that. So Lindsey Graham, yes, screaming that Modi is a warmonger. The chief warmonger of America. I mean, this guy has got to be the biggest warmonger in American history. At least the one that's making the best money. $800,000 trip to Kiev and that's just for staying at a Radisson hotel. Yeah, what other services was he getting and how much those services cost? You've got to ask that question, whom he was buying at the U.S. taxpayer expense. Yeah, there's that little issue. Not that the American government's going to tell you much. Remember, Epstein killed himself, and the Epstein list never existed. No, never existed. Until Medvedev pinned that it's not just the U.S. government that has Epstein evidence. Russia has it too, and probably not only Russia. So there's that little sword of Damocles hanging over the Western elite. I would already be publishing some of that just to cause chaos, like Prince Andrew, the younger brother of Charlie the Islamic, king of England, king of the Inglabad, the Caliphate of Inglabad. And you can't make this stuff up. This is ludicrous to a degree that, and these are the people that are running the West. I mean, what do you expect from them? What can you possibly expect from them? So we've got that. Russia continues to move forward. Pokrovsk is surrounded from the north east to the north and from the south southwest. There's still a lot of area that isn't surrounded, but there's only one real road in and out for supplies, and that's under fire control, which means that Russian artillery, Russian drones can intercept things that are moving in and out. Drago. Доволь. Сядь. На. Кушай. Так что, so there's that. Еще одна машина. Man, like massive amounts of cars. As soon as I start filming on this road, all the cars start popping up. Before that, it's like none. Мой палец дурной. Anyways, ow, got my finger a little bit. Yeah, let's go. So anyways, yeah. So Pokrovsk is being surrounded, Konstantinovka is being surrounded from the south and pressed in. And Konstantinovka, Kramatorsk, and Slavyansk, they're this conglomerate of three towns. They're close enough to each other, forming this little triangle. And they are the last really fortified area. Now, Konstantinovka, you can more or less approach a little bit from the ground, which is happening right now, but once you get to it, you're in the low ground. And approaching Kramatorsk and Slavyansk from the south or the east, you're still going up from the low ground and even a little bit up. Historically, World War II, the way those territories were taken back was Krasny Liman, which is to the north. It's really the high ground, much higher, and Soviet forces took that and then outflanked the Germans and went south, directly south, and cutting off Slavyansk and then into Kramatorsk, heading downhill. And that's what's happening right now. Russian forces are getting closer and closer to Krasny Liman. Krasny Liman is going to fall. The Ukrainians are basically running out of troops. That's why Zelensky signed the 60 plus. You know, in other words, we're going to save lots of money on pensions by just getting rid of the pensioners. You know, they can stand in the trenches, even if they've got to have a walker. You can stand there and shoot back off that walker. Absorb at least, you know, a little time for us in the trenches. Right here, take a grenade and blow yourself up with at some Russian soldiers. It kind of reminds me of this old Norse tradition where somebody got really old and didn't die in battle before that, so they went up a mountainside and jumped off the mountain to commit suicide for family honor, so the family didn't have to support them. This is just being writ large on an entire nation of Ukraine. And why not? Zelensky gets to steal more money, and so do the rest of his people. Umirov, there's an interesting concept right there. Umirov, who is the Minister of Defense, and has been for about a year, right? So this guy, the stuff that's coming out about him, the amount of mansions he's bought up in Florida, his brother, his brother's family, his parents, they're all living in the U.S. And they're smarter than the rest of these guys, because what they've done is every single property that they've purchased with the money that he's stealing from the Ukrainian military, they've incorporated as a separate entity, and they keep changing them around ownership or proprietorship of these properties from one person to another. And the reason they do this is because every LLC by Florida law has to be that you have to have a separate act to try to confiscate it back for the Ukrainian government. Say tomorrow the Ukrainian government changes and the people actually go after these corrupt bastards. Well, now you have to subpoena every single property separately by the property ownership, so they keep these properties shuffling, they keep them isolated from each other, no one single owner, make it very, very difficult to confiscate anything back. You get one property, you don't get all the other properties. And they do these fake resales to each other and show profit, you know, and so on and so on. And under that profit, they're laundering money that they're stealing directly from the Ukrainian government. And thank God for that corruption too, because that also works for us. The more corrupt they are, the more they steal from the military effort, the easier it is for us. So thankfully for that, but you know, you see this, and this is where your money's going, Americans. And don't think for a second, at least a portion of that money isn't getting rolled back to American politicians. It is. This is why these guys get cover in places like Florida. You think that the U.S. government doesn't know they're there buying up properties? You think the U.S. government doesn't know that, which was in the news, as a matter of fact, about 4 months ago, that Zelensky bought an investment bank in London for $1.5 billion. You really think they don't know about that? Or when the president of South Cyprus came out and declared Zelensky bought a casino hotel in South Cyprus? I mean, these people, and don't think that probably partial ownership isn't somebody like Biden's narco kiddo or somebody else like that, some other narco kiddo, some other American elite. Yeah, it's all part of the game. And you're the suckers that are going to be there getting constantly milked. Are going to be answering for all that with collapsed lifestyle, which is out of stock. The American lifestyle is out of stock, and raised prices and so on. I mean, that's what you're paying for. That's what you're getting. So that's where we're at right now. A sorry state of the world. Thanks to Uncle Sam, thanks to the English elite, and so on. Nothing changes for the better these days. Not for quite a while. I mean, we've had World War III basically, if you really look at it on a big scale. You might say World War III started somewhere around 2008 by some cases. Definitely 2013, 2014. I think 2008 with the whole war in Georgia, which started thanks to Condoleezza Rice. That was an interesting point too, because the Russians had proposed to Saakashvili the 3+1 plan for negotiations, Georgia, Abkhazia, South Ossetia, plus Russia. And the point of that was to make Georgia a confederacy that they could get those two republics back into Georgia with autonomy. Just same thing as Jari is. And Saakashvili actually agreed to that. That's right, he actually agreed to that initially. Then comes along Condoleezza Rice galloping along on her nightmare horse there. And then you got the 2008 war. So there you go for that. Oh, Lord have mercy. Hold up. Ой, прости, товарищ. So anyways, he wants to go home already. He's tired of the walk. We've been walking for a while. Okay, we're going home. Yes, we're going home. We're heading back. He didn't like the extra walk off in a different direction. So, yeah, starts powering me. Go home. I want to go home. I'm tired. So there's that. That's what we're dealing with. So I'll keep you informed. What we see, what's going on. There's that. So, got nothing else at the moment. Everybody's very busy with the news of this upcoming meeting, which I have a bad feeling about, and I very much hope I'm wrong. I extremely hope I am wrong. I wish I was wrong on lots of things that I've predicted over the last 10 years. God knows, I wish I was wrong on a lot of things. But unfortunately, I've been right, including this whole civil war in Ukraine and everything else involved there. But we'll see. Hopefully this time I'm extremely wrong, and I'm proven wrong. God bless. Cheers. And as always, please support the channel. Click subscribe, give a thumbs up, and if you can support by spreading the channel, that's great. If you can support financially, that's also great. My contact, my Bitcoin wallet is in the description. So any kind of support for my work, more than appreciated. Thank you very much.